The firing sequence engaged. 5,000 plasma batteries cycled to lethal charge, locking onto the single, unmarked hull floating in their crosshairs. Then came the stutter. Not a misfire, but a mathematical impossibility. Dense titanium materialized out of nothing, snapping into existence exactly 3 inches past every Zylock gun barrel. The armada fired anyway. They didn't break the shields, they bypassed them entirely. The resulting flash whited out the sensors of every observation post in the sector. How to end a galactic invasion in under 30 seconds. It didn't start with a battle cry. It started with silence. Just hours earlier, the Zylock hegemony had positioned their golden, ornate armada in high orbit around planet Vial. 5,000 ships, casting long, dark silhouettes across the continents below. And their system-wide broadcast was less a negotiation and more a death sentence. An ultimatum demanding immediate and total surrender. The Valian Republic was a blip on the galactic radar. Agrarian, quiet, unassuming. The universe thought they were defenseless. They were just ruthlessly efficient. On the bridge of the solitary Valian interceptor, Commander Kalen watched the tactical display. The recycled air tasted like dry tin. He didn't sweat. His pulse stayed flat, rhythmically drumming against his throat. The ship hummed, a low, guttural vibration from the reactor that bled through the floorboards, traveling up his boots and settling deep in his chest. A single ship against a 5,000-vessel armada. It was absurd. It was suicide. But Kalen's hand rested calmly on the engagement console. The Zylock flagship, a sprawling monstrosity of gilded armor and excessive firepower, demanded submission. Kalen responded by transmitting a counter-ultimatum. 3 words: leave or die. The arrogance of it sparked the Zylock admiral's rage. The order to fire swept through the hegemony fleet. This was asymmetric warfare at its most extreme. Kalen felt the deck plates shift under his boots as his ship's experimental drive spooled up. It wasn't a weapon system, not originally. It was just a utility tool, micro-FTL logic applied to localized coordinate shifting. He engaged the sequence. Truth is, the Zylocks never knew what hit them. The Valian ship didn't fire a single laser. It simply calculated the exact spatial coordinates of all 5,000 active Zylock firing vectors and folded space, and then the titanium cubes dropped into reality. When the hegemony fleet pulled their triggers, they shot themselves. The internal detonations ripped through the ornate hulls, tearing golden plating into jagged shrapnel. Fire bloomed in the vacuum, brief and violent, before suffocating into nothing. The shockwave rattled Kalen's ship, tossing him against his harness, the straps biting hard into his collarbone. He tasted copper. Blood from a bitten lip. He didn't wipe it away. His eyes remained locked on the tactical feed. The enemy fleet was crippled, their offensive capabilities shattered in less time than it took to draw a breath, taking the first step toward becoming drifting derelicts. But they weren't dead. Not yet. They had underestimated an unremarkable opponent, and it was going to cost them everything. Kalen's fingers danced across the glass terminal. The second phase was ready. The autonomous metallic spheres, cold and heavy in the ship's lower bay, hummed with kinetic anticipation. He fed the crippled armada's internal coordinates into the targeting grid, locking onto command bridges and engineering decks. It turned out the real slaughter hadn't even begun. Kalen exhaled, a slow, ragged breath that fogged the glass of his display. The Zylok fleet was bleeding out, venting atmosphere and raw plasma into the cold dark. But a wounded predator was still a predator. He didn't hesitate. His fingers dragged across the terminal, keying the final execution command. The ship's reactor whined, a high-pitched mechanical scream that rattled Kalen's teeth and vibrated through his jaw. Micro-FTL didn't care about hardened armor plating or overlapping energy shields. It only cared about math. And the math was flawless. Thousands of autonomous metallic spheres vanished from his ship's lower bay in a blinding flash of displacement. In the exact same microsecond, they materialized inside the gilded Zylok dreadnoughts. They didn't arrive in empty hallways or cargo holds. They snapped into existence directly on the command bridges and deep within the heavily guarded engineering cores. There was no grand final stand, no dramatic exchange of fire. Truth is, the Zylok commanders barely had time to register the sudden, sharp drop in air pressure before the slaughter began. The spheres were blind, driven purely by thermal signatures and kinetic programming. They spun up instantly, accelerating to lethal velocities in confined spaces. They ricocheted through the command decks, executing rapid or targeted physical eliminations of every breathing entity essential to running the ships. Armor crumpled under the sheer kinetic force. Consoles shattered. The brutal, mechanical efficiency of it left no room for retreat. 30 seconds. That was all it took. Kalen watched the tactical feed turn into a graveyard. The aggressive red icons of 5,000 warships flickered, sputtered, and went gray. The massive thrusters cooled. The ornate golden hulls went permanently dark, transforming instantly into a massive field of drifting derelicts caught in Vile's gravity well. His hand slipped off the console, suddenly heavy. The sweat finally broke on the back of his neck, cold and sharp against his skin. The silence in his own cabin was deafening. He had just butchered an empire's pride without firing a single conventional shot. Kalen initiated the final recall sequence. The interceptor shuddered violently as the metallic spheres snapped back into his cargo bay. They landed hard, the heavy clunk of their return vibrating through the soles of his boots. Their brutal work finished. He didn't check their condition. He simply plotted the descent vector. The unmarked ship turned its back on the floating tombs and burned hard for the planetary surface. Millions of miles away, deep space observation posts sat completely frozen. Sensor techs from a dozen different star systems stared at their screens, paralyzed by the telemetry pouring in. They recorded the data. They replayed the impossible footage. A utility tool, a simple localized transport drive designed for moving heavy freight, had just rewritten the rules of galactic engagement. Imvael wasn't just some defenseless agrarian colony. They were the quiet architects of a terrifying new reality. They had weaponized the very act of arrival, proving the fatal cost of underestimating a quiet world. And Kalen just wanted to go home.